Ugly motherfucker.
How you doing, people? It's your friendly neighborhood Dragonslayer here, bringing you the latest on TV, movies, and sometimes gaming. Before we begin today's topic, I just want to say that if you enjoy this video, then please like, share, subscribe, and turn on all the notifications to see more. It's only a few seconds of clicking for you, but for me it means the world if I was able to entertain you. Also, leave a comment down below letting me know what your reactions were to this video, as I will try to respond to as many of your opinions as possible. And who knows, I might just post the top comments I found interesting or funny in the next one. Also, we reached 121 subscribers.
Woo! Yeah, baby! That's what I've been waiting for. That's what it's all about. Woo!
So I just want to thank all of you for the great support, since it means everything to me that so many of you found my content entertaining. Also, as I mentioned earlier, here's a top comment from Asari Shepherd, which says, "The kid who plays Theo is the worst actor in this thing, and they blessed us with a few scenes with just him. Thanks for that." Well, in my opinion on that one, I don't think the actor for Theo is the worst one. I think his character is the worst one written for this show, and also, he doesn't get a lot of screen time, so that's probably why people have that opinion about him. We'll have to see as the shit show goes along if it gets a little bit better for his character, but I highly doubt that. For any of the Amazon unique characters. Now, as much as you guys may have liked a 1-hour video of me reviewing every single little detail of episode 1, I must unfortunately say that from now on, I will make each episode in a shorter format. I'm mostly doing this for my own sanity because I can't watch an episode 3 to 4 more times like I did with the first one.
What? What the fuck?
I nearly went insane from that shit. So instead, I'll do a short summary of each of the 4 arcs this episode contains, which are the Elrond, Galadriel, Harfoot, and Arondir x Bronwyn arcs. Then I will point out lore breaks, and finally I'll give you my closing thoughts on this episode in general, along with a rating. Just so you know, this will be the usual format from now on for review videos on Rings of Power. And additionally, due to my busy schedule, I will try very hard to at least post 1 video a week, so consider more than 1 a bonus, if you will. With that out of the way, let's start with the dirty, homeless hobbits.
Smoke weed every day.
So, we pick up where we left off at episode 1, where Nori, or female Frodo, accidentally falls into the fire pit where the meteor man is at, and she decides to touch him for some reason, which causes him to temporarily wake up and grab her hand. And the second he does that, the fire around him disappears, but then comes right back up after he loses consciousness again. Which, I guess, thanks showrunners? I mean, what was the point of that scene?
Fucking wrong! What the fuck is going on?
It was scared the shit out of her, because, hey, you did it, you know? You did it. Anyway, Nori then manages to convince Poppy, the goofy female Sam character, to help her carry the meteor man to a safe location, but due to his size, they must steal one of the village carts to carry him there. They have some goofy dialogue, and Nori mentions how it must have been the work of fate that she was the one that found him and covers him up to let him sleep. The next day, she returns with some food and finds Meteor Man searching for something in the dirt, and the second she says hello, this freaking madman just screams at her.
You picked the wrong house, fool!
Hey, Big Smoke, it's me, Carl. Chill.
CJ. Oh my dog! What's up? Hey, baby. You okay, man?
And it causes the trees around him to die, but then he remembers that she helped him get out of the crater and stop screaming. Nori then introduces herself, shows the man that he can eat the snails by eating one herself, which is very disgusting, and then the crazy bastard eats all the damn snails she brought with her, with the shells still on them.
We could have had something special, but you one crazy ass bitch.
And she then asks the Meteor Man what his name is, and the Meteor Man grabs a wooden stick, and draws some symbols in the dirt, while muttering the same word of Manaure or Manaure. which roughly translates from Elvish Quenya to English as He of Fire, or literally Holy Fire. So as I mentioned in my previous video, if these are the first words that this man is uttering, then it must mean that he is either one of the two blue wizards that Tolkien mentioned may have come earlier at the time the Rings of Power were made in the 17th century of the Second Age, or he is the Balrog of Moria in human form.
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Either or, it doesn't sound good, either theory. Worse if it's a Balrog.
Well, shit.
But regardless, we don't yet know definitively who he truly is because they're using the common trope of giving an obviously essential character in the future a amnesia episode to keep the audience guessing until the end. We then cut to Nori getting the news that her dad twisted his ankle badly while helping put up a tent for the festival, which puts him out of commission from traveling for the foreseeable future, and Nori feels guilty that she wasn't there to help her dad. Hours later, we find Meteor Man looking over the hill next to a tree, clueless I guess, and Nori then tells him that they can't help him anymore because they're migrating in 3 days. Meteor Man then looks at them and their lanterns in a menacing way, and then Poppy tells the man that the lanterns have fireflies in them. Menacing music starts playing as he looks at the lantern even more, and the one I'm talking about, by the way, is Poppy's lantern, which causes her to drop it. Meteor Man then proceeds to touch and whisper in an indiscernible language to the fireflies, and Nori is curious as to what he is saying. He then has the fireflies do a shape of a constellation, which from how it looks, it seems to be the star of Arondir, I'm sorry. I'm not quite sure, honestly. Puzzled by this shape, the hobbits assume the man wants them to help him find where this constellation is at, and Nori says that she may have a good idea of where she can find it.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And then Meteor Man again faints, and all the fireflies this time just start to die. Thus ends the Hobbit arc so far. So, if you remember, Galadriel launched her dumbass off the boat and then just decided to swim back to the mainland, even though she is hundreds of miles away from any land.
Excuse me, what?
And my god, they really are trying to show people the ascension of the Mary Sue goddess. Because last time I checked, elves aren't freaking androids with unlimited endurance.
You can smell the shit from 5 miles away.
They need to eat and sleep too, or they die from that reason as well. Or they can just get very exhausted to the point where they can grow depressed and die. You know, what I'm trying to say is they're not invincible, okay? Like they're trying to portray them to be, or how they're trying to portray Galadriel to be.
You are stupid.
After swimming what must have been several miles, I mean, we're never told. All we know is that a lot of time passes by. Galadriel miraculously stumbles upon an abandoned raft full of tired people because she can never be punished for dumb choices.
Why not, you stupid bastard?
She tries to get into the raft, but the men don't want her to get on, and it always must be the freaking men that cause problems, because according to the show, men are the cause of all problems in this universe.
Oh my god, bro. Oh, hell no, man. What the fuck, man? Get your ass.
And that's when we get introduced to Halbrand, or Halbro, as I will call him. And what do you know? He is against bringing her on board. However, the only woman on the boat who is of dark skin, I have to point this out because they're making it even more obvious in the show, besides Galadriel, says that if they don't let her into the raft, then her blood will be on their hands. And then the men just let that woman pull Galadriel up. And it's kind of weird because if you're stranded out at sea and somebody is in that position, but they look suspicious, normally you would want to question that person before letting them on the boat because you don't know if they're going to kill everyone on board to increase their chances of survival. But anyway, you know, they let her do that. They let her pull Galadriel up, and then Halbro just puts up his hands like, well, I can't do shit now. She's made up her mind, guys. What do you want me to do? She has lady parts. Come on, man. And then Galadriel gets questioned by the men on the raft about what happened to her, and she makes up some story about her ship being attacked and her ending up stranded. Obviously, though, because Morfydd Clark is not good at lying with this character,
God damn,
no one believes her, especially Halbro. And one of the men lifts up her hair to show her elf ears, and everyone flips out like she's an alien or something.
Gotcha, bitch!
Like these people have never seen elves. Look, this would have made more sense if this was in the Third Age, where elves were very rare in terms of how many people saw an elf, because many of them were migrating to Valinor. But in the Second Age, there were a lot of elves running around in Middle-earth. And then they call her a liar for not mentioning that she is one. And again, guys, what's with the forced elf racism in this show?
Oh, shit. Here we go again.
Really, what is it with these people and forced racism towards elves? Meanwhile, a traumatized person in the raft points to the distance and starts yelling that they're safe, and everyone is about to signal to the raft when one of the men says that they shouldn't be that obvious calling for help because Corsairs might get them. However, everyone notices that what they are seeing approaching them actually is a giant discount kaiju serpent with pieces of their boat attached to it, and it thumps their raft, and this causes the woman that helped Galadriel get into the raft in the first place to push her right back off, blaming it all on her, as she says she must be like the main reason for drawing in this kaiju, which again, this is the laziest way you can give Galadriel more plot armor protection than she needs already. Like, who wrote this shit? Look, regardless, Halbro detaches his part of the raft from the big group that eventually gets eaten by the kaiju, and the big monster just then chooses to ignore Galadriel and swim away.
No way. Yes way.
Now, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I thought carnivorous giant fish, or carnivorous fish in general, are usually drawn in by bright-ass colors like the white robe she is wearing. But I guess that's not the case in Middle-earth, according to the showrunners. So and by the way, you'll quickly find out that this show has thrown the concept of common sense out of the window and also set it on fire.
Yes, I can definitely smell shite.
So, fast forwarding a little bit, Galadriel has some small talk with Halbro, which basically boils down to Galadriel saying, "Duty demanded I return to Middle-earth, and that's all you need to know, so stop asking me dumb questions, human." And Halbro says, "Well, my past is kinda fucked up and I don't want to talk about it. Also, I will conveniently tell you that the orcs forced me from my homeland in the Southlands to confirm your already verified suspicions of orc activity."
Coincidence? I think not!
After that, they team up to chase the common goal of wiping out these orcs that Halbro mentioned, and then out of nowhere, a big storm conveniently shows up minutes later, because we need to have some action, because by God, your audience has been bored for almost 45 minutes of just exposition dialogue.
stop it. Get some help.
To give him some form of a hard time. And then Galadriel idiotically ties herself up to one of the poles of the raft that ends up breaking off and sinking, which forces Halbro to risk his life to untie her to save her sorry ass. After that whole ordeal is over, they are then saved by some mysterious figure in a Númenórean ship that isn't obviously Tar Miriel. Thus ends the Galadriel Arc. Compared to the others, Elrond's story in this episode is a very short one actually. But I like this one more because of the dwarves being genuinely Tolkienian in behavior and appearance. So, to start off, Elrond ends up in Region, touches and mentions Feanor's hammer, in a very sexual way I should probably say.
Oh my.
And Celebrimbor elaborates on that by talking about how he wants to create something of grand importance like his grandfather's Silmarils. Which, by the way, the only people that will understand these references that he is making will be people that read the Silmarillion. And unfortunately, the normies, which are going to be, I would say, the bulk of the people watching this show, won't understand a single bit of what the hell this old drag queen is talking about.
Who gives a
Because, let's be honest, that fucking dress is terrible. Furthermore, the reason why he called Elrond over was to have him help secure a labor force to quickly create a forge that can emit the heat equivalent of a dragon's fire to achieve his goal of creating objects of great beauty in Middle-earth. I don't know, guys. Are they foreshadowing? Anyway, Elrond suggests to him that he has tried contacting other races for help like the dwarves, and Celebrimbor says that he hasn't tried that, but he's not sure if the dwarves will even agree to work with him because he's an elf. Elrond assures him that he is besties with the Prince of Khazad-dûm, Durin IV, and that he will be able to help them. Now, when they get to the Western Gate, they're denied entry to the kingdom by order of the prince, and confused by these turn events, Elrond decides to invoke the right of seeking Tarag, or seeking Tahag. I tried to pronounce as best I could, guys. I tried, okay? Which, by the way, this whole right that he's talking about, I found out is totally made up by the showrunners as an excuse to get Elrond inside to advance the plot.
You what?
And Elrond goes in and finds out, and, you know, he's gonna try to find out the reason why this whole ordeal has happened in the first place. And, just so you know, Elrond, before he goes in, he tells Celebrimbor in this, now, it is not the exact words that he said, I'm paraphrasing it, but he basically tells Celebrimbor, hey man, look, don't worry, I'll take care of it, you let me work my magic, just walk back home, okay? Just wait for me back home, I'll take care of this shit. And Celebrimbor is completely alone. Are you telling me the lord of a very populated elven settlement would not come with an escort?
You naughty, naughty. You teasing me, you naughty, naughty.
Jesus Christ, showrunners. That's like basic fantasy royalty 101. Or medieval royalty etiquette 101. Like, come on. Come on, people. Now you're just fucking basic shit up that medieval societies did. Anyway. I do have to say, though, that when Elrond gets inside Khazad-dûm, the CGI shot of, like, a big piece of the landscape of Khazad-dûm was actually very good. However, even though it made me feel great, it only lasted 30 seconds. And the terrible armor designs of the dwarf guards threw me off a lot. Especially those dreadful fucking beard helmets. Who gave the okay for that? The dwarves of Khazad-dûm should be better armored, and their armor should be more sturdy, but also more ornate than the ones of the dwarves than the ones the dwarves of the Third Age, wear later on, because this is supposed to be the height of the kingdom of Khazad-dûm, because they just recently discovered Mithril. But regardless, Elrond is ushered into a room where Durin IV appears, and when Elrond greets him, he just rudely ignores him and starts talking about the conditions and punishments of the rite, and Elrond obviously agrees to them to move the plot along. And look, to save you time, it's simply a challenge of seeing which individual can outlast the other in a test of endurance by continuously smashing rocks with hammers.
Oh, you've got to be kidding me.
And after God knows how long, because they don't even tell us how long they do this shit, Elrond decides to willingly forfeit and loses the challenge, and Durin then tells him, and I am phrasing this directly from him, a dog may bark at the moon, but he cannot bring it down.
You fucking donkey!
Plus, he gets banished from all dwarf holds. I forgot to mention that was like the losing condition for Elrond. He then requests the prince to escort him out of Khazad-dûm, and then we find out the real reason why Durin had such an unmanly, even childish, I would say, temper tantrum against him. Apparently Elrond missed his wedding 20 years ago, and I am not fucking with you. That is the entire actual reason. He just fucking missed his wedding.
You serious?
And look, showrunners, I don't know if you know this, but 20 years for a dwarf isn't even that much time. It's not like a human where 20 years is literally a quarter of their lifespan. Okay? Dwarves live an average lifespan of 250 fucking years. 20 years is nothing for them. Okay? But anyway, somehow Elrond is able to convince Prince Durin to let him see his wife wants to make up for that mistake of not showing up at the wedding. And to make this part even shorter, we basically have a scene where Elrond has dinner with Princess Disa, who by the way does have a beard, albeit a very hard to see one, in the form of small sideburns. And Prince Durin, where Disa convinces him to mend his broken bromance with Elrond because modern Hollywood thinks that deep friendships between straight men are suppressed forms of homoeroticism.
Hey, yo, what the fuck?
Hey, look, I'm not the one that thinks this shit. Blame Hollywood for that. However, Elrond thanks them for his hospitality and attempts to leave until Durin changes his mind, which obviously seems to have been Elrond's plan all along, and then tells him to sit back down to talk about his king's proposal. Or he says his king's proposal, but in reality it's Celebrimbor's proposal, which I found a little bit strange. And whether he will consider bringing it up to his father, King Durin III. We then cut to the last scene where the prince tells the king that Elrond knows nothing about the recent discovery of Mithril, and the king says that he finds it hard for him to believe that, since the prince seems to have a weak spot for elves, or fondness, I should say, for elves. But he also mentions what a pure coincidence it is that an elf should land on their doorstep at this specific time when they've made such a monumental discovery. The prince then protects his bro by saying that he's known Elrond for 50 years and that he didn't sense that he was trying to hide something from him. The king then claps back by saying that perhaps Elrond was the one that sensed that it was the prince who was hiding something. We then get some more pointless, forced elf racism dialogue again between the two of them.
Alright, listen to me, you knife-eared piece of shit. If you go any further with your piss-stained pubic hair you call a wig, I'm gonna wreck your shit so hard that you won't even be able to walk with your limp dick.
And the king says that there can be no trust between hammer and rock, because surely one will eventually break. And then he shows the prince a box full of small fragments of mithril, and thus ends the Elrond arc. So, the duo finds out the village has been completely abandoned and destroyed, with no idea of the cause, but Arondir, the Don Lemon dude by the way, with the nice buzz cut, notices that there is an underground passage that was intentionally made by someone in one of the village houses. Bronwyn tells him that the men couldn't have done this, and Arondir tells her to go back by herself to warn her people, while he investigates the tunnel by himself. Now, in my opinion, this is the dumbest thing I have ever heard, because if shit goes down, he has no backup. And you would think the most responsible thing for him to do would be to go back to the garrison to warn his fellow elves so they can all investigate this matter together. However, Amazon is once again on a mission to make male characters look very dumb and to have them make stupid decisions that at this point makes a troll look like a misunderstood intellectual.
No, God! No! God, please, no! 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 No!
And I mean Middle-earth trolls, not internet trolls. Middle-earth trolls, which are dumb. Regardless, Bronwyn justifiably tells him that he shouldn't do that because he doesn't know what could be crawling down there. And then before jumping into the hole, he replies with the very foolish statement of, "That is the reason why I must go."
I don't like where this is going.
We then fast forward to Bronwyn basically just frantically running towards the village inn, and she warns them of what she saw at Hordern and recommends that the entire village should flee to the abandoned elven watchtower for their safety and to better fortify themselves from any attacks of orcs. However, the old dirty white village elder, yeah, good one Amazon, tells her to stop spreading this gossip around the town because he believes Hordern was actually abandoned due to a big landslide earthquake, or a landslide created by an earthquake. he also says, the other villagers don't want to invite elves back into their lives after they just got rid of them. And he says, obviously, the statement of, safe for some, and I'm wondering what they're talking about. Now, audience, do your feeble brains get the obvious scene setup and future payoff that we'll be getting in a few minutes? Because Amazon, or the showrunners, I should say, they seem to think that, they don't seem to think, by the way, that the audience has enough attention span or common sense to detect this. And by the way, they're gonna set this all up like, oh, they don't believe a strong, independent woman's warning, and they're gonna regret that very soon, guys. Just you wait. But also, I found it funny that that like after the guy says, and safe for some, everyone that looks at her are basically white people, by the way, in the shot, and it's just a few seconds of filthy, angry white people, villagers, looking at her the same way that KKK members would look at an anti-racist white person in the deep southern US during the 1950s. Like, can we please stop with these pointless artificial race tensions that elves seem to have with everyone in a universe where this doesn't belong, it shouldn't belong? Yes, there were times where tensions between certain groups of elves, dwarves, or men would be high, but usually they were due to stubbornness of the core nature of each side to compromise, and those tensions usually ended with those groups reconciling after an intense event with terrible consequences that taught them a harsh lesson. A very good example of that is the aftermath of the Battle of the Five Armies in the story of The Hobbit. If the showrunners have such a damn hard-on for depicting modern fantasy racial tensions, why didn't they just make a damn TV adaptation of Dragon Age, which has never been done, by the way? Well, okay, yeah, there was one. It was like a weird, crappy anime. But there's never been a TV adaptation, like an actual TV series adaptation. And you know what? I honestly think that it probably would have turned out to have been a better show than this abomination if they had done so. But look, let's circle back to Arondir for a bit. So we find out that the orcs are the ones that have been digging the tunnels, but not before these orcs start chasing him in those same tunnels. And he eventually manages to squeeze through a hole into a very deep pond and is able to get out of it and prepares himself to attack whatever orc's about to surface. But then he gets his ass quickly snatched by some orcs behind some of the vines that he was standing in front of. And for now, he is out of the picture until episode 3 comes out. Meanwhile, Bronwyn returns to her ransacked home to find that Theo has been hiding from something very dangerous, which turns out to be a very well designed, I have to say, Wendigo-inspired orc, probably bred specifically for tunneling very fast. At the time, the orc ignores Theo's presence, but quickly senses his mother behind the cupboard and starts attacking her. My guess is because he touched the blade of that dark blade with the mark of Sauron. So my guess is that's why it didn't attack him right off the bat, because there are scratch marks in the little hatch that he was hiding behind that showed that the thing already knew and that he was there, but I guess he just wasn't allowed to attack him. However, the orc does eventually attack him after Theo tries to come to his mother's defense after the orc detects her and breaks the cupboard. And look, to summarize this fight, which is kind of weird. By the way, this fight is the only type of intense action, one of the few intense action scenes that we get in this second episode.
Oh my god! Wow!
But to quickly summarize the fight, the orc launches at Theo and slashes him for long enough that Bronwyn is able to pick up the orc's rusty sword and stab it clean through its lower back, which basically should have rendered it immobile right away to be easily killed. But instead, it just makes it more angry and violent.
Wait a minute!
Like, this thing is like an orc Hulk. However, Theo manages to somehow wrap a rope around this orc's neck. And by the way, before he does that, he is able to go up the stairs, and this orc somehow has the strength to break wooden stairs. And Theo, eventually, he is able to jump down while holding his end of the rope and hangs this freaking orc. And then eventually, though, because Theo is supposed to be a young child or a teenager, he isn't tall enough or heavy enough to hang this orc completely. And as a result, the orc tries to slash at him to maybe kill him or bleed him out to prevent him from choking it. And then eventually, Theo fails. He lets go of the rope. The orc is basically on its knees, is about to attack Theo, and then out of nowhere, Bronwyn grabs an axe and cuts this orc's head clean off, apparently.
Nice.
And Bronwyn, like the strong female character that she is that only survived because her son, a man, helped her survive, presents the decapitated orc head to the entire village at the inn, and then basically says the equivalent of, "Come with me if you want to live." Afterwards, we see a scene of Theo's blood accidentally touching the dark blade from the previous episode. Or I wouldn't say accidentally touches, more like the blade draws in the drops of blood that are flowing out of Theo and absorbs it. And basically, as the sword absorbs Theo's blood, it starts to regenerate.
What? Bro, what are you talking about, man?
And this scene obviously is stopped by Bronwyn asking Theo if he is ready to move, and he says yes, all while menacing music plays in the background as the villagers migrate to the safety of the Elven Watchtower. And of course, look, my guess is they're all gonna die, except maybe Theo and Bronwyn. That's just my guess. But thus ends the final arc of this show. Now, for this video and future ones, I will only point out at most 10 lore breaks, because if I went over every single one, then the video would be more than an hour long. However, it might be less than that depending on the episode that I'm covering and how many lore breaks it makes. But for this one at least, I have about 6 actually. So let's start with number 1. Celebrimbor looks too old in the show, even though in the lore, he is referenced to have been born either during the same year of the trees as Galadriel or later, which would make him either the same age as her during the time period of the Second Age, or younger by several centuries, which is why he is so ambitious to outdo his grandfathers, because he's way much younger than Galadriel, or about her age, so he also inherited the arrogance of Feanor, which usually leads to tragedy, as we have seen in his story. Galadriel, this is number 2 by the way, Galadriel in the lore rejected the pardon of the Valar while she was still in Middle-earth because she wanted to establish her own kingdom, and she never sailed to Valinor until the aftermath of the War of the Ring in the late Third Age. This is because at the time, Galadriel was younger, but she was also very proud and just wanted to give the middle finger to the Valar, if I'm being honest to you. But it was mostly because of her character at the time of her younger days, and because she was very ambitious in wanting her own kingdom, which eventually would become Lothlorien, though she and Celeborn did rule Eregion for some centuries until Celebrimbor was made lord of Eregion. Number 3, Corsairs of Umbar didn't exist in the Second Age. They started to appear, I will say, because if I say created, it sounds kind of strange. They became a thing, I will say, from the surviving forces of the descendants of Castamir's sons after the period of the kin strife in Gondor, which was during the 15th century of the Third Age, was over. The only thing that could have existed at the time period that they're talking about in terms of, I guess, pirates, would have been corrupted Númenóreans named the Kingsmen, but even then I wouldn't go so far as to say they were pirates. In fact, I don't think during the time period of the Númenóreans, and this includes the time period where there were the two factions of the faithful and those who followed the arrogant Númenórean kings, the evil ones, I don't think there were ever pirates, because Númenor's navy was superior to everyone else's and they were just supreme in everything. They were like the strongest human civilization at that time period. However, due to the compressed timeline, guys, I have no idea what period in the Second Age we are in at this time, regardless, because they jump forward and back so constantly because of this compressed time. Number 4, there cannot be 2 dwarves alive sharing the title of Durin, since it messes up the prophecy of Durin the Deathless, where it is stated that the father of the Longbeards would return 7 times after his death and rule as king by being born into his own royal line. Therefore, preserving the line of Durin was a very big deal for the Longbeards. And the sign of his rebirth is shown to be that each dwarf with that name, or who gets granted that name, usually shares the same physical characteristics, voice, and moral aspects of the original Durin the Deathless. Also, those dwarven kings with that name lived lives way much longer than the average normal lifespan for a dwarf. So, for example, Durin the Deathless lived to be at least 2,395 years old or more, according to the dwarven legends. Number 5. The Easterlings shown in the Southlands that eventually turn into Mordor are described as short and broad, with swart, which means dark colored, or sallow, which is defined as yellowish or sickly pale colored skin, and having dark eyes and hair. From those descriptions, they seem to be a very diverse group of people whose physical traits are closely related with the Middle East, the Far East, and the Eurasian steppe tribes like the Mongols, which is why I found it very funny that they only showed white people in that village when those people were described by Tolkien as being the equivalent of a racial melting pot filled with many types of human cultures, including the ones of Rovanion. And that should tell you that modern Hollywood and these showrunners really only care about diversity when it suits them for their financial bottom line.
Damn!
And the last one, by the way, number 6, Harfoots, or Harefoots. Harefoots. There we go, I got it right this time. They weren't dirty, homeless hobbits, oh my god. Hobbits, I meant to say. Who constantly migrated because, as a matter of fact, they are described as shorter and smaller than the other breeds, browner of skin, meaning tan or olive skin, had no beards, and did not wear any footwear. Their hands and feet were neat and nimble, which these Harfoots, they're dirtier than a freaking homeless man in New York. And they liked highlands and hillsides, and lived in holes called smiles, a habit which they long preserved. And here's the kicker, guys. They were accustomed to settle in one place longer.
It's all there, black and white, clear as crystal. You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
Meaning they did not migrate constantly, like the show says. So I don't think I have to say anything else about that matter since I've presented the evidence. So let's move on to the closing thoughts. So look, for the lore breaks, those were the ones that I noticed right off the bat, but please let me know in the comments section below if I missed any. As for my rating of this episode, I have to give it a 4 out of 10, simply because the appearance of the dwarves made me power through the rest of the boring slog that this episode is in order to watch their scenes, since they are the only thing so far about this show that is Tolkienian, besides, you know, the occasional references they make about the first age, the visuals, again, armor designs not included, the music soundtrack, and the practical orc designs that we saw in this episode. Unfortunately, most of the dialogue was just really basic bitch dialogue, as so many people have said, as the previous episode. You know, they try to sound deep, but in reality, they're just saying dumb shit to sound smart. And the Harfoots feel like they have been forced to be in the show to fill up screen time for that 1 hour mark, and the stranger is just a random hobo that decided to squat at their home. And Galadriel is as recklessly dumb as ever, and she never gets punished for making stupid decisions or constantly defying authority. And every character she interacts with just lets her do as she pleases without a care in the world, as she keeps annoying people. Actually, you know what? This seems to be a common theme for any of the important or semi-important female characters in this show. Which, the only thing this does is encourage your target audience to quickly get bored and not give a shit about these female characters, since they already know they're all the same carbon copy of the modern Hollywood strong female character archetype.
Hey, look at that! Look at that! No shit!
And also, what is with the constant forced racism towards elf? And look, here's, actually, let me just rapid fire this. So, the constant forced racism towards elves, the incompetent male characters, and the lack of common sense that some of these individuals have really make you think that you're not really watching an adaptation of Tolkien's work, rather you're just watching a very botched, I should say, Dungeons and Dragons campaign with half of the book pages and map missing, plus no dungeon master to regulate the game.
Run, bitch! Run!
And look, guys, to be honest, those are my opinions regarding this episode. So, I just want to say again, thank you so much for watching, and I really hope you liked the video. I tried to make it a little bit shorter this time, so I hope it really turns out well. And other than that, my friends, Nalu e govanetvin.